Let's start with our first news. Ilya is no longer fighting for money. He has been UFC champion for only a few months, but he is already earning serious cash as one of the biggest names in MMA. He first turned heads when he arrived in the UFC in 2020, quickly becoming a standout among hardcore fans. But it was after he beat Alexander Volkanovski in February 2024 that he broke into mainstream attention. Fast forward to 2026, Ilya is making more money than ever and expanding into business deals and sponsorships, including a recent deal with Richard Memmiel. Speaking in an interview with Jorge Ebro, Ilya said that after his fight with Charles Oliveira last summer, his financial situation moved to another level. He explained that for the first time in his life, he will enter the octagon without financial pressure, calling it stability for his family. Ilya added that he is now free to enjoy the art of fighting, saying he feels not at 100% but at 200% and even more dangerous than before. He warned that if he was dangerous before, he is now extremely dangerous, driven by passion rather than necessity. Some believe fighters often decline after achieving life-changing wealth, mentioning examples like Conor as comparisons. However, others question whether Ilya will follow the same path or continue rising. Francis Anano reacts to MMA community comments. Ngan's decision to leave the UFC back in 2023 was highly controversial and widely discussed across the sport, sparking debate among fans and analysts about his future and legacy in MMA, with many still analyzing the impact of that move on the division and the overall landscape of the UFC going forward. As opinions remain sharply divided within the fighting community, worldwide attention continues to grow every single day now. Move on to another news. Ariel Helwani is raising serious concerns ahead of Khamzat versus Strickland, warning that the fight could be under jeopardy before they even step into the cage. Helwani said the UFC needs to be fully prepared for something very bad to happen next week, pointing at Khamzat's intensity and the growing tension between the two. In his view, this situation could get so heated that it leads to a real altercation, potentially even forcing the fight to be called off if things go too far and someone gets hurt. The tension is clearly real. Khamzat has now fired back at Strickland after Sean made comments about using a weapon against him. Khamzat did not take that lightly at all. He responded by saying, New Jersey is like home to him because of the Muslim community there, and he does not believe Strickland would actually show up with a gun. He went even further, saying if something like that happened, it would not end well for Sean, and there would be serious consequences. Khamzat also mocked the idea of Strickland actually following through, questioning how someone who has not even handled basic things could carry out something like that, and made it clear he does not see Strickland as someone who wants real problems. Outside the cage, Ariel Helwani believes there have been only a few fights where trash talk has gotten this personal and uncomfortable to digest. He pointed to Sonnen versus Anderson Silva, Conor versus Khabib, and Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman as examples, and said this would be the fourth case. He added that, not since Conor versus Khabib have we seen trash talk involving religion and ethnicity. At this level, he warned that when things become this inflammatory, there is a real risk the situation could spiral into a brawl, or even lead to the fight being cancelled after Strickland's most recent win over Fluffy. He clarified that by very bad he does not mean extreme violence or anything fatal, but rather a scenario where confrontation or chaos outside the cage could force officials to intervene and cancel the fight. Move on to another news. Ilya gets heated with Sean Strickland over his recent comments. He did not just call out the champ for a fight, he absolutely exploded. His post-fight call-out was so aggressive that the UFC cut his microphone during the press conference and shut the session down early. Strickland went far beyond standard trash talk, throwing out harsh comments about where Khamzat lives and other sensitive personal remarks. That quickly crossed into dangerous territory, as most fans know Khamzat is from the Caucasus region. So as Ilya, the two champions have history together, having trained at All Stars Gym earlier in their careers. Interestingly, just a few days ago, a Georgian YouTuber Vakan Ilya was hosting a live stream breaking down the Khamzat versus Strickland fight. A few hours after Ilya and former champ Merab joined the stream and addressed the situation directly, Ilya made it clear that many people do not fully understand who they are dealing with when they make threats or throw around reckless words about people from the Caucasus. He stressed that the mentality in that region is different and warned that things can escalate very badly when lines are crossed. Let's hear what Ilya had to say. It's always easy to sit thousands of kilometers away and throw insults at guys from the Caucasus. You can say whatever you want when you're comfortable, when there's no real pressure on you, but Talk is cheap when you're safe behind a microphone or a screen. Come prove it in the octagon, instead of just talking too much from far away. The mentality that we Caucasians have is different. I know how we're built. Where we're from, we stand up. For the words we say, and people who don't do that will face consequences. If someone has something to say, the octagon is there, that's where respect is earned. I understand that some words need to be spoken to build hype, but it should not cross lines. When the cage door closes, everything becomes real, and that's when you find out who you're really dealing with. Khabib Nurmagomedov has made it clear that he believes Makhachev versus Ilya is the biggest fight in MMA right now, with global attention rising and fans debating legacy stakes across divisions as anticipation continues to build around potential super fight discussions within the division and beyond the sport itself. Worldwide attention move on to another news. Khabib Nurmagomedov says Ilya versus Islam is bigger than Jones versus Pereira in the UFC right now, bigger even than John Jones versus Alex Pereira. Khabib Nurmagomedov stated, "I think right now, yeah. I think Ilya Islam, it can be the biggest fight, not John Jones and Pereira." For a long time, Khabib had already suggested that if Ilya managed to put together a strong run at lightweight, a showdown with Islam Makhachev would become inevitable. That scenario has now taken shape after Ilya knocked out Charles Oliveira in spectacular fashion, cementing himself as one of the most dangerous forces in the division. With that win, Ilya has positioned himself at the center of one of the most anticipated potential super fights in recent UFC history. A clash with Islam is now seen as very realistic, and fans believe it could happen sooner rather than later, depending on how negotiations and title situations unfold. This possible matchup has created massive debate across the MMA world, with many believing it could define an entire era of the lightweight division and even impact pound-for-pound rankings globally. Meanwhile, in a separate conversation, Justin Gaethje spoke about his fighting mindset during a recent appearance alongside Demetrius Johnson. He explained why he does not always push offensive grappling or submissions against certain opponents. He specifically addressed his approach in a previous fight against Paddy Pimblett, saying his strategy is built around adaptation rather than forcing risky positions. Justin emphasized that his main goal is to control the pace, apply pressure, and use wrestling and ground and pound when it is most effective, instead of chasing submissions unnecessarily. He explained, "I grappled, I was safe, I had to win. Every time I get too aggressive on the ground, I risk losing position." Justin also discussed how his coaches often advise him to avoid overcommitting in grappling exchanges, especially when he is already in dominant positions and landing damage from top control. He added that sometimes staying safe is the smartest path, even if it looks conservative from the outside, because winning remains the ultimate priority. He further explained that in certain situations, opponents are forced to constantly move and defend, which creates openings without needing high-risk submission attempts. As discussions around strategy, legacy, and super fights continue, the lightweight division remains one of the most competitive and unpredictable landscapes in all of MMA. Move on to another news UFC fighter in huge altercation. Patricky Pitbull, brother of Patricio Pitbull, is set to make his karate combat debut in Miami this Saturday against Shazai Rind. However, things escalated during their final stare-down when the tension boiled over into a street confrontation in Miami, with emotions already running at an all-time high after days of build-up and verbal exchanges. Both fighters got into a physical exchange outside the competitive setting, with Patricky securing a tight body lock on Rind as the situation quickly turned chaotic. Rind responded by pushing his face away in frustration before firing off a head kick as they separated. The strike ultimately missed, but it only added more fuel to the chaos unfolding between both sides. Patricio Pitbull quickly stepped in as the situation intensified, and he ended up exchanging punches with Rind during the heated moment as tempers fully snapped. What was supposed to be a controlled promotional stare-down completely broke down into a full-scale altercation in the streets of Miami, catching attention from everyone nearby and turning the scene into complete disorder. Despite the chaos, clean shots landed with significant impact, but the intent from both camps was obvious, as neither side showed any willingness to back down or de-escalate the situation. The energy had been building all week, and it finally exploded at the worst possible moment during fight week. Clips from the incident quickly surfaced online, showing the intensity of the confrontation as voices were raised, teams shouted over each other, and both fighters continued trying to assert dominance before being separated. In the middle of the heated exchange, voices could be heard shouting, "Easy fight tomorrow, tomorrow." Another moment captured Patricky saying, "I told you no. I told you don't hold me down like this. Why is he holding me?" As frustration boiled over and the situation continued to spiral out of control in real time, security and team members eventually moved in to physically separate the fighters and regain control before the situation could escalate even further into something more serious. The incident has now added even more hype and controversy to Patricky. Pitbull's upcoming karate combat debut, turning an already anticipated fight into one of the most talked about and explosive events of the weekend across the combat sports world. Move on to another news. Conor is being called scared to fight. Charles Oliveira. Diego Lima argued that Conor will not agree to fight Oliveira since he believes the same thing will happen to him that happened to Holloway. He said, "We would love a fight against Conor, for example, but after that last fight against Max Holloway, it is not going to happen with Conor. Conor will run away, that is a fact." He added that Conor is not stupid, and although he says he is coming back, he would never return to face Charles. According to Lima, Conor would be afraid to come back against Charles. He said fear is the word because he believes Conor knows he would be taken down and crushed like Holloway. Diego Lima continued explaining that styles make fights, and in his view, Charles brings a level of pressure grappling and finishing ability that Conor has historically struggled with. He emphasized that once the fight hits the ground, it becomes extremely difficult for strikers to recover position against someone with elite submission skills. Lima pointed back to past performances suggesting that when Conor faced high-level grapplers, the outcomes showed clear vulnerabilities. He argued that Charles operates at a different pace entirely and that constant pressure forces mistakes even from elite strikers. According to him, the mental side of the matchup is just as important as the physical one. He said that when fighters start thinking about takedowns and submissions, it changes their entire striking output and timing. Lima concluded that because of these factors, he believes Conor would avoid the matchup altogether. He stressed that, in his opinion, it is not about money or hype, but about risk management and survival inside the octagon. He repeated that after seeing how dominant Charles can be when fights go into deep waters, many opponents start to reconsider their willingness to engage. He added that fans often underestimate how quickly momentum can shift once Charles finds rhythm. Lima believes that even confident strikers can be overwhelmed if they cannot dictate distance early. He finished by saying that in modern MMA matchups are decided not only by skill but by confidence under pressure, and that is where he sees the biggest gap in this potential fight scenario now. Move on to another news. Du Plessis versus Kamaru Usman next. Recently, we covered that Du Plessis dismissed Kyle Baralho's campaign to secure a fight with him, even after Baralho traveled to South Africa to call him out directly in person. Despite the attention that moment created, Du Plessis showed no interest in rushing into that matchup. Not only that, Du Plessis also hinted that he would have news about his next fight very soon, which immediately sparked speculation across the middleweight division. According to a recent report from Kevin and Knox, it has been heard that the UFC is looking at Kamaru Usman as a potential next opponent for Du Plessis. Now, of course, this is not confirmed, and fans are being told to take it with a grain of salt. But if it does happen, it would be one of the most intriguing matchups in the division right now. The idea of Du Plessis facing a former dominant champion, like Usman, has already created major discussion online, with fans debating how the striking pressure of Du Plessis would match up against Usman's elite wrestling and control game. Both fighters bring completely different skill sets, which is exactly why this matchup is being talked about so heavily in early discussions. Du Plessis has been on a strong rise, building momentum with aggressive finishes and constant forward pressure, while Usman remains one of the most experienced and physically dominant welterweights in recent UFC history. If this fight gets finalized, it would represent a massive step up in competition and a major statement opportunity for both men. At the same time, it could also reshape title conversations depending on how the division moves forward in the coming months. Interest continues to grow as fans wait for official confirmation, but for now it remains only a reported possibility rather than a confirmed booking. Ilya is no longer fighting for money, and his recent rise in status continues to shift attention across multiple divisions, as fighters across the UFC landscape adjust to new financial and competitive realities at the top level.